guys? It's your boy Luke, here for our DFS fades and sleepers for this week's American Express. This is more of a strategy-based video meant for large field GPP contests where we identify some of the more overhyped players going into this week, our fades, and of course some of our diamonds in the rough, the guys being a little bit overlooked by sleeper picks. The goal here, of course, is to try and avoid some of those chalk plays that I don't expect to either have some top end upside or even make the cut. And of course, to try and target some of those diamonds in the rough that might not have the highest floor projections, but have a ton of upside and could very well go out there and be the play of the slate. So with that being said, let's get right into it. We'll go ahead and start off with our fades for this week. So at number one, we have Tony Finau at $10,200. And personally, at most golf courses, Tony Finau would be somebody I'd be trying to target in that low 9K range. But this week finds himself in that 10K range, priced among guys like Jon Rahm, Cantlay, and even Scottie Scheffler that I would much prefer to roster. The kicker here is that he's coming in with quite a bit of ownership as well. So we have the shots gained metrics up right now. But if we hop over to the summary page, you can see that I have him at 12.9% expected ownership, which honestly, that's probably even a little bit low. Might come in closer to 15 or even 16% ownership, depending on what type of slate you're playing on. And I have a lot to worry about with his putting. You can see over his last 24 measured rounds, that's what you're seeing for these shots gained metrics here. Same for the rankings over there on the right. He's losing 0.441 shots gained putting per round. And on Bermuda grass, it's not like he's good there to begin with. And of late, a lot of these measured rounds have been on Bermuda. We also haven't seen him been quite himself off the tee. Right around neutral with his off the tee play. And for somebody that's one of the longer players on the PGA Tour, you can see in terms of distance, number 38 in the world, you would expect much better numbers off the tee. So even though we have a much wider setup at the Nicklaus course, also at La Quinta, some of the largest fairways on tour, he hasn't really tapped into that off the tee game of late, which definitely gives me a little bit to worry about. The kicker here with a Tony Finau is the ownership, right? I expect it to come in a little bit higher than the 12.9 I have it at right now. Just from personal experience, people love rostering guys in that 10K range, particularly when they're very, familiar, very influential fan favorites like a Tony Finau. They tend to garner a little bit more ownership than they should at times. And you guys can see with the Stadium fit, the La Quinta fit, and the Nicklaus fit, an all right Nicklaus fit kind of guy, but this is somebody in that 10K range, right? We're looking for somebody like a Jon Rahm who's number one across all three categories, or Patrick Cantlay that's top five across all five categories, or at the very least, right? And I'm not huge on Scottie Scheffler this week. You can see I don't even have him in my player pool. He's at the very least top 40 across all of these rankings. Can't say the same thing for Tony Finau. And again, that putting of late gives me a lot to worry about. Our next fade is going to be Russell Henley, who was a core pick for me last week, but unfortunately did have that slight Sunday collapse, and it's hard to call it a collapse when he shot 65, but of course had the lead coming on that final 9 holes, ended up shooting one over. So no matter which way you're cutting it up, wasn't what we were looking for from a Russell Henley, and this is far from a good setup from him. This is more of a longer Bombers type of paradise where you're looking to make birdies in bunches. You're not going to see quite the emphasis at getting the ball in play like we saw last week at a YLI Country Club. And this week he's coming in with similar types of ownership, 20.9%. He's also $9,000. And if we hop over to the recent metrics, he's going to look great. A lot of his last measured events, 0.9 shots gained on approach per round, that kind of thing. People are going to look at the shots gained putting on Bermuda and expect him to have some positive regression there. But what I worry about is his aggressiveness. You can see 65 in the world in birdie or better percentage. Most other people in this range are much better than that. Will Zalatoris, the one exception to that rule, which we're going to get to here in a second. He's decent on par 4 scoring, but where you're really going to make your hay this week is on the par 5s. And you can see his par 5 scoring number, 106 in the field. At YLI Country Club, we did only have 2 par 5s in play, so par 4 scoring was a lot more important. That's part of the reason we really liked him last week. Before this setup, just not really going to give him that same type of boost. You can see 161 in distance, number 22 in driving accuracy. And again, while that was great at YLI, not the same type of situation here at PGA West, La Quinta, and of course the Nicklaus tournament course. Number of reasons that he's also chalk, the greens and regulation percentage, the numbers from 50 to 125 yards. Much like I outlined during my course preview earlier on this week, we're looking for some of those longer numbers a little bit more, particularly this 150 to 175 range. And he's been just about average for this field in both of these categories. So, the longer you get, the worse he gets with those irons. I'm looking to prioritize some of the other guys around him just a little bit more. Will Zalatoris, going to be one of our sleeper picks we'll get to here in just a second. And even somebody like a Cameron Trengale spending the whole way up for Matthew Wolf is something that I'll be doing a little bit more this week than going to the chalk Russell Henley, who let us all down on Sunday. All right, now for our last fade, we have Patrick Reed at $8,800, who has been a perennial fade on this channel, especially over the last 3 to 4 months. His swing has not looked remotely as sharp as it did towards the beginning of 2021. And even though he did have that top 5 finish at the Hero World Challenge, outside that, he hasn't really made the splash we're looking for. So to see him priced at $8,800, to also see him priced around some of the guys who have been in tip-top form of late, is going to make him a relatively easy fade this week, particularly when he's coming in at nearly 15% ownership. And much like a Tony Finau, for the same reasons I outlined before, he's a relatively popular player, likely to come in with even higher ownership than that. That's something that the algorithm isn't really keen to accounting for. I mean, we'd have to be accounting for narrative on every single player in the field. So just not something that I use with my data-driven approach, but with my experience with playing DFS, you can kind of get a feel for where guys will be under-projected and over-projected in terms of their ownership, and this is definitely one of those situations. Let's go ahead and talk about the course fits. Because he's been so atrocious with his approach play, especially towards the end of 2021, that's why these course fits are so far down the board. I mean, 137 out of 156 players. He's worse than some of the guys that we have no data on at all here. They actually project for a better course fit. So that should just tell you his game, or at least the state of it over the last 24 measured rounds. If we take a look at the recent form, you can see that's reflected there at number 87 in the field. Doing a little bit of a deeper dive on his game, it doesn't get much better, right? Losing on approach, losing off the tee. Sure, he's gaining around the green. He's always been a world-class player, but he's hardly a positive in that category. And if Patrick Reed can't even be a significant gainer around the green, then what is there to really look at for a positive, right? This is somebody who's typically the best in the world in that category. So even though he's gaining on the greens of late, he's used to gaining even more. He's just in a slump all around with pretty much every aspect of his game. Even though he is an aggressive player, I do like the birdie or better percentage there at number 70. Typically, he's much higher on the list. A lot of that just comes down to the bad recent play. Pretty much every other metric on this list is in the red or even in the deep red. I mean, driving distance, number 146. He's never been known as a longer player. That number's actually gone down and down and down over the years as players have gone longer and longer with the equipment changes. Number 200 in green regulation percentage. I mean, that's really held him back. That's one of the worst numbers in the field. Really bad from some of those wedge ranges, just really bad all around. So all the metrics point to Patrick Reed still needing a little bit more time to round into form. And if he's going to come in 15 or even 18% owned, like I would expect him to, with that little bit of boost with that name recognition, going to be a clear fade. Again, Cameron Trengale, even though he's also not the best course fit, coming in with better form, just better metrics, better course fits all around the board, or even going down to a Christian Bazane who had a pretty solid week last week over there in Hawaii, or Justin Rose. I mean, Ricky Fowler we're going to get to as a sleeper here in a few minutes. All those guys I would much prefer. Now for our sleeper picks, as promised, getting to Will Zalatoris, who's going to come in at number 1. He's coming in at just single-digit ownership, just 5.7% projected in my algorithm, and quite frankly, he's just being forgot about, right? With all of these Korn Ferry Tour guys coming onto the scene, it seems like we're forgetting that Will Zalatoris was number 1 out of that class and was clearly the best new player on tour last year. So at $9,100, absolutely love what we're seeing from him, especially from the shots gained perspective. So let's go ahead and hop into it. If we take a look at his last 24 measured rounds, which quite frankly weren't even the best sample size for Will Zalatoris. He didn't really do anything in that fall swing. People were expecting him to perhaps break through for a win, post some top 25s. While he did make some cuts, was far from the sharpest that we've seen. So I expect improvement from even these excellent numbers that we see right here. So first and foremost, gaining a third of a stroke per round on approach. That's what we're used to seeing from Willie Z. I mean, the guy's just an absolute phenom, particularly with some of those long irons. Off the tee, gaining as well, a little bit lower than what we've seen in rounds past, typically closer to 0.3, even 0.4 shots gained off the tee per round. So perhaps could see him even tune that up this week with some of these large fairways, and fairways where he's going to be able to really hack away and give them his full go off the tee. In terms of the putting, has really been what's elevated him to the next level, right? On Corn Ferry Tour, was known as a relatively shaky putter, has really started to work on it. And if we take a look at his last 24 measured rounds, the reason why he's been so consistent has been that flat stick. He's been a gainer on most of these Bermuda grass surfaces, and if he continues that here into 2022, is going to have a massive year. And by massive year, I mean 2, even 3 wins on this schedule year. I mean, this is somebody who has the ball striking of somebody like a Will Zalatoris, not Will Zalatoris, Colin Morikawa, Justin Thomas, that type of thing. And it's really going to be when the putter flips for Willie Z, when he starts to just post up tons and tons of these top 10s, top 5s, and potentially a win here and there as well. The advanced metrics for Will Zalatoris also paint a really nice picture. The birdie or better percentage, a little bit lower than what we've seen in the past, is typically closer to the top 25 mark in the world. So for him there at number 77, that's actually the lowest or probably the floor for what you'll see from him. Very aggressive, uses an analytical approach. Somebody who takes a lot of lessons from some of these analytics coaches out there. Scott Fawcett, most notably, he implements the decade approach at almost every single golf course, which tells you to be extremely aggressive, to try and get tons of those birdies, because you can afford to make bogeys at time if you're going in and cashing in like he is. So number 77 in the field there, I expect that to improve. Number 10 in greens and regulation percentage. I mean, we know this guy's hitting absolute lasers out there. And if we take a look at the approach buckets, I mean, he's been excellent from 200 yards plus, but typically a lot better than from 150 to 175, typically a lot better from 125 to 150. So I expect some positive regression even with the irons. So with that all being said, typically one of the best iron players in the world, coming in at single digit ownership. I like him a lot more than somebody like an Abraham Ancer. He's got the distance advantage over an Abraham Ancer and has been much better putting of late, and even better than Russell Henley, right? Henley, of course, recent form immaculate, coming in off a second place finish. The issue is he also doesn't have the off the tee play and the off the tee distance of a Will Zalatoris. So Matthew Wolff, same type of thing, right? More of a bomber. That's why he's a core pick for me this week. And those are the guys I'm trying to settle on here in this low 9K range. Let's talk about our next sleeper. It's going to be Rickie Fowler, and this is a little bit of a numbers play. You can see respectable course fits across the board. The putting on Bermuda grass has always been solid. The guy's from Florida, at least lives there now. But growing up, and this is the reason I really like Rickie Fowler, he's from California. He's from the desert. We've seen him have a lot of success at these desert type of golf courses, whether it's TPC Sawgrass. I'm sorry, not TPC Sawgrass, TPC Scottsdale, whether it's here at PGA West, or of course, we've seen him have success at just West Coast golf courses in general. I mean, Pebble Beach, we've seen him play well at Torrey over the years. Perhaps it's the local vibes, him being used to playing these golf courses. I'm sure he's played PGA West numerous times outside of tournament play over the years because he's from the area. And if we go ahead and take a look at some of these metrics, they also paint a really good picture. I mean, first and foremost, gaining in all 4 major statistical categories except approach, which we know he's been very inconsistent with the iron play of late. That's really what's been holding him back. But remember that this doesn't take into account his excellent play at the Zozo Championship. Out there in Vegas was very solid, ended up finishing in the top 10, was solid with the putter, was making a ton of birdies. It was a very nice setup with large fairways off of the tee. We're going to get a very similar look this week. His numbers on approach would be positive if we had that tournament in play. So much like some of the other guys we've talked about during my value plays video, or even the core picks earlier on this week, sometimes we have to take into account the sample size at play, particularly when it's during the swing season and in the fall, where there are plenty of events where we don't have those shots gained metrics. Some of these guys are playing much better than the stats that we have on hand. Rickie Fowler definitely falls into that category. From the stats that we have, you can see a top 75 birdie or better percentage player. He's always been aggressive, looking to make a ton of birdies. In terms of some of the iron play statistics and off the tee statistics, I don't think a lot of people would expect him to be long, but he's at number 59 in driving distance. Clearly gained a few yards off the tee that people aren't really giving him credit for. The approaches from 50 to 125, he's always been a very solid wedge player. It's not a surprise to see him above the pack there at number 82. And the putting and the scrambling has really held him back, right? If we think about Rickie Fowler, we think of a guy who's a wizard at getting up and down. So I'm not worried about this 216 number, this 136 number in terms of scrambling, or the putting inside of 5 feet, right? Those are volatile statistics. You miss one putt inside 5 feet, you're going to be at the bottom of the list for like 4 or 5 months, right? You're going to make 99% of those putts within 5 feet. So these are volatile statistics. I'm not really going to hold it against them too much. We know long term that Ricky Fowler, first off, one of the best putters on the PGA Tour. Also somebody who's very solid with the around the green play. He's solid off the tee. He's going to be accurate off the tee. It really just comes down to that approach play. And again, if we're trying to take a chance on anyone in this range, I would much rather try to take a chance on Ricky Fowler's iron game than somebody like a Justin Rose, who has really been a crapshoot of late, or even an Alex Noren, who's better at these harder type of golf courses. I mean, even Siwoo Kim down here, right? He had that win here at the American Express, but the year before that withdrew after a first round 87. All these guys extremely volatile. They're more lottery picks than anything. Ricky Fowler has been doing everything except the iron play, and we've seen him play well with the iron play over the last 3-4 months. Just needs to do it this week at an event, at a type of venue here at a desert-style golf course that fits his game very well. He's going to be feeling very comfortable with these type of vibes, and it just, let's see, 7.4% expected ownership, going to be very easy to get leverage on him here. Let's now move on to our last sleeper pick here, which is going to be Chez Reavie at $7,700. This is probably the first time here on the channel that I'm actively trying to tout Chez Reavie, but he's somebody who of late has just been hitting his irons like no one else. So you see the total model rank here, number 23 in the field, which is excellent value for here at $7,700. Number 13 for our Nicklaus fit, top 34 for these other two golf courses. But in the shots gained metrics, you guys are going to see exactly why I'm loving him this week. 0.724 shots gained approach per round. I mean, just absurd stuff, right? We know how good his long irons are. That's what he's infamous for. That's what he's really made his name here on the PGA Tour. And at the stadium course, where we have some extremely long par fives, really hard to reach into, he's going to have no problem doing so because he hits absolute lasers with his driving iron off the ground. Can reach anything from within 270 yards pretty reliably. The off the tee play hasn't been the greatest. I mean, he's not the most accurate driver of the golf ball, but of late has really flexed that. You can see number 15 in the entire world in driving accuracy. So that's typically something that Chez Reavie either has or doesn't have, and it tends to come for 3-4 months at a time. And at the stadium course with so much water in play, that is going to be a little bit useful. Unfortunately, still one of the shorter hitters on tour. So at La Quinta, also at the Nicklaus course, going to have to really take it apart with those long irons. Let's go ahead and take a look at what he's done with those of late. From this key range from 150 to 175, number 39 in the world, exactly what we're looking for. From 200 yards plus, number 64 in the world. Again, he's a shorter hitter, but still excels in that category, exactly what we're looking for. And the putting stats, atrocious as per usual, right? You can see in some of those scoring ranges, some of those shorter ranges, a little bit worse than some of the longer ones. But at the same time, if we take a look at the putting stats of late, at least over the last 24 measured rounds, a third of a stroke loss per round. I mean, he's far from a safe play, but if he ends up turning that around, he continues this approach play that he's used to, he's going to be a gainer off the tee this week with these large fairways. And again, if he continues that off the tee accuracy, he could be a significant gainer off the tee. That's something that's definitely very underrated with the shots gained metrics. I really like his upside this week. He's far from a safe play, definitely more of a GPP type of build, but I expect him to come in extremely low owned at his type of price tag. He definitely seems slightly overpriced when you take a look at it on the surface. But again, 0.7 shots gained approach per round over his last 24 measured rounds. That's a large enough sample size there where that is far from a fluke. The guy's just been on absolute fire with those and coming in at 3.8% expected ownership. I mean, essentially a free square there. You put him in 3-4 lineups this week, you're getting significant leverage to the field, even if you're 150 maxing. Just how I'm going to be using him, right? He's not going to be in my main single entry lineup or anything like that. But if I'm looking to try and get unique, to try and maybe take some of those chalk plays up top, try and fit in a John Rahm and a Patrick Henley into the same lineup, he's going to be a key way. I go ahead and do so. That's all I've got for this week's fades and sleeper picks. Go ahead and let me know down in the comments, first off, who your biggest fade is for this week, and second off, who your favorite sleeper pick is. I always love to hear from you guys. Love to get some debate going down there in the comments. So go ahead and let me know who you guys have got. And as always, we will have our DFS live stream tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. Eastern time. That will be talking about the weather, my player pool, any ownership discussion, any live questions you guys have down in the live chat there. So make sure to go ahead and set a notification. A link will be down in the description so you guys can go ahead and do that so you guys don't miss any of the content we have coming out. Of course, if you haven't already liked the video, make sure you guys go ahead and do so. If you haven't already subscribed to the channel as well, make sure you guys go ahead and do that. We're going to have even more golf content coming throughout the entire season. We'll be at the Players Championship. We'll be giving you guys some reports from the grounds, and of course, our regular content schedule for most of the other tour events. I believe we'll also be at the Valspar Championship, the Honda Classic, maybe even the Arnold Palmer Invitational. Might even travel across the country for a few more. We'll have to see in the future how that all shakes out. Either way, though, really looking forward to this week's event. I'll see you guys on Wednesday for that live stream, and let's get this cash.